Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 5:30, Monday, April 20th, 2026. I'm going to open the Town of Morristown Board of Liquor and Tobacco Control meeting. Any agenda changes or additions?
None.
We have minutes from April 6th, 2026.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of April 6, 2026.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So a motion by Richard and a second by Leah. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from April 6th, 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
That would be unanimous. Liquor applications, we have 4 in the packet. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve liquor license applications for the Black Diamond Barbecue LLC at 69 Morristown Corners for first class, third class, and outside consumption. And I don't all at once.
Sure.
Rock Art Burley LLC, 632 Laporte Road, first class, and outside consumption. Morrisville Food Co-op LLC, 46 Pleasant Street for second class. Cumberland Farms in Vermont Incorporated, 20 Upper Main Street for second class.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. So motion by Richard, second by George. Chief, I'm assuming we're okay with these?
All set.
Okay, great.
I just want to point out that I'm an employee of the Morrisville Food Co-op. So I can abstain if need be.
If you feel you need to.
Don't feel that I need to, but I just want to make sure.
If you
it's clear.
feel, yeah, if you feel like you can
I can.
support these, that's your choice. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion regarding these liquor license renewals? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the liquor license renewals as presented, please say aye. That would be unanimous. Tobacco license applications, we have 1.
Make a motion to approve the tobacco license application for Higher Elevation LLC, 65 Northgate Plaza, Suite 6 for tobacco and tobacco substitute endorsement.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. A motion by Richard, second by George. Discussion. Chief, we're okay with this one?
We are.
Okay, good. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
And that would be unanimous.
Thank you.
Special event permits, we have none. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn with your Board of Liquor and Tobacco.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
So motion by Richard, second by George to adjourn. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
That would be unanimous, and we are out of liquor and tobacco. Yep. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 5:34, Monday, April 20th, 2026. I'd like to call the regular Town of Morristown Selectboard meeting to order. Do we have any agenda changes or additions?
You don't.
Okay. So community comments. As I've done in the past, I would just like to remind everybody about community comments. This is a regular select board meeting, and we're here to do select board business for the town of Morristown. However, public input is, of course, welcome. And I welcome individuals to express their concerns. Please keep your concerns to non-agenda items and non-personnel discussions. If you do have a discussion about personnel, bring it to the town manager. If anybody has anything that they would like to comment on, I'll give you 2 minutes per person, and please keep your comments addressed to the chair. And please identify yourself.
My name is Kathleen Lowell. And I do have some concerns.
And just for the record, Kathleen Lovell from Morristown. Thank you.
I've gotten hold of some text messages between the chief of police and another officer about me after I filed a complaint. The text says, "I'm headed home and taking a personal day tomorrow. This academy letter pissed me off. I apologize." That is what the text message said. So I'm going home before I do something I regret later. And further in the text chain, it specifies Lovell's complaint to the VPA because I filed a complaint. I'm concerned. I live across the street from the police department building. That seems to be a threat to me. If I were to come in here and tell you something that you did pissed me off, I need to go before I do something I regret. I had a feeling that you would probably consider that threatening. And that's how I consider it. It's not okay. This is a very big concern. I am within view of the police department.
Please address me. Thank you.
And for the chief of police to be
Point of order.
Yeah. Would talk to the issue, not personnel.
in a text message conversation that says things like that is extremely concerning to me. I would hope it would be concerning to you. I've been here before with similar concerns. I will be back with more concerns because I've gotten hold of text messages, I've gotten hold of emails, and I found out a lot of stuff, including calling executive sessions to chat about me.
Thank you,
I'll be
Kai.
back.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, I'm going to move on. We have minutes from April 6, 2026.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 6, 2026.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Richard and a second by Rose. Any discussion regarding the minutes that are in our packet? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 6, 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
That would be unanimous. New business. We have our superintendent, highway superintendent back once again. You're spending a lot of time at select board meetings lately. We have, I believe there's 4 different bids here that we have in our packets. 2 were added late, and hopefully everyone were able to get a hold of those. And this is in regards to paving. So Jordan, I'm going to let you present this to us.
Okay,
Matt, hold just a minute. I don't have the other bids. If it's not gonna affect your process.
you can have, this is all the bid.
Yeah,
Julie's going to get, I believe, a memo that I prepared that I'll be
Okay.
speaking off of. My apologies, I wasn't in last week, so the memo's a little
okay.
late. She's
Thank
gonna
you.
print memos for you all to review
Not
as well.
problem.
And the 2 new ones were Whitcomb and SD Ireland. Is that correct?
Correct. We have Pike Industries, J Hutchins, also All States purchased them. So All States, J Hutchins, and FW Whitcomb and SD Ireland are the bids that we received.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll give Judy a minute. She's got some memos, so you guys can read along with me as we go through this.
In my basket is really not, yeah.
Yeah, do you have copies of
Yeah.
all 4? Richard, do you have copies of all 4?
Yes, I'm printing off of them all right now.
Okay. That's okay.
There's the 2 new ones.
Okay.
Do you think we should wait for him or go ahead?
I gave George a copy of
I don't think so.
the two new ones.
Okay, they're in his box, but that's all right.
Yep.
That's
I
all
was
right.
looking for in my box. Yeah, my fault.
I'm copying something for you from Jordan for that, vision this. Was
Okay.
coming right out there to not.
The memo that I mentioned.
Okay. And while we're waiting, these are paving bids for this summer for 2026.
For this summer for 2026. And I broke it out so that we can discuss the scope of work and the different sections that we're paving, the different treatments that each section is receiving. You will see that there are some costs associated as I work through the scope of work. The cost that is with each section, the way that I did the RFP was they gave us a total per ton price, per square yard for milling and per square yard for reclaiming. And then also price per section of some measurements in the field. So each bidder provided that information, which you'll see in your packets. But I took the price per section from our low bidder and have that listed as we talk about these sections so that we can see, where the money's going for each of these sections.
Bids are all apples to apples. right?
Bids were all apples to apples. The notes are pretty easy. So that the bids were all equivalent. They all include traffic control. There's some funny wordage in Pike Industries, traffic control, fine grading, sweeping, et cetera, to be done by others. But what they mean by that is they're hiring subcontractors for that work. It is included in their bid price.
Okay.
So that was one big discrepancy when comparing the bids. But they did confirm that, as well as all bids come with a 12-month warranty. This scope of work, or we'll go from the top.
Thank you. That already answered one question. So
Yeah.
thank you, Tyler.
Okay. Go ahead, Jordan.
All right. So the first section we'll talk about is Lower Elmore Mountain Road. And this is the half mile of Lower Elmore Mountain Road, starting at Route 12. So the first half of Lower Elmore Mountain Road. That one's in okay shape. So that's going to get a 1/2 inch shim and an 1.5 inch wearing course. That will come to a total of around $62,000. Once you get a 1/2 mile in, the road deteriorates further and it's in quite a bit worse shape. It still does have a decent profile and decent shape to the road so that we're confident we can save it without reclaiming it. But we're going to go a little bit heavier on the shim layer to take out more of the potholes and to give us a better base on it. So the second half of Lower Elmore Mountain Road, you see here, section 1B, that's 0.8 miles. That'll be a 1 inch shim over the entire length of the road and then an 1.5 inch wearing course laid over top of all of that. That will be from the end of the first section all the way to where the road currently turns to gravel near Fitzgerald Road. So all the pavement will be repaved. That section right there is around 123,678. The next section is Randolph Road, and this is 1.4 miles of road from LaPorte or historic Route 100 up to Fitzgerald Road. It's definitely the worst section of Randolph Road. That is going to get a 1/2 inch shim and an overlay, but there are some sections on that road that are particularly bad where frost heaves have happened and some culverts have been replaced. So we'll do a spot shim over those first, and then we'll shim over the entire road, including those spot shims, and then an overlay on top of all of that. So it'll be a 1/2 inch shim, 1.5 inch wearing course, as well as some spot shims. That will be just under $182,000 for that section. Needles Eye Road, we all know that one is in real rough shape. The profile is gone, the sub base is compromised, so we're pretty well forced into full depth reclaim, fine grade, and compact on that. When we do that, we do a 2.5 inch base layer followed by an 1.5 inch top, and that'll be the entire length of Needle Eyes Road. From Route 15, there's a joint there. We can avoid doing the apron all the way down to Katie's Falls Road. That one comes in at around $242,763. That includes the right-hand side of the Y, the left-hand side going to the bridge. We're not going to reclaim that. Depending on how it ties in and how we do on our yields, we'll maybe shim it or just do an overlay on it. But we're going to stick to reclaiming just Needle Eye itself. LeClaire will not get reclaimed. Next one on the list is Sunset Drive. That is a 1/2 inch shim, 1.5 inch wearing course, and that will be the entire length of the road for just under $30,000, $29,000. DeMars Road, that is going to be a 1/2 inch shim and 1.5 inch wearing course. That one also, like Randolph Road, has one section that's particularly bad. So we'll do a spot shim over that, and then we'll shim over everything, including the spot shim, and then a wearing course on top of that. And the whole idea with all these different layers that we're adding, just to give you kind of some more understanding of it, is asphalt, when you lay it, for every inch of asphalt you lay loose, you get a 1/4 inch of compaction. So if you lay it over a hole that gets more mix, you get more compaction. So with each lift, you get rid of a little bit of the bump and a little bit. So by doing multiple layers, that's how you make it nice and smooth again. So that was DeMars Road, 19,000, just under $20,000. The next road is Bridge Street. We split that up into 2 different sections. So the first section is from the Favreau Bridge to Route 100, and that's going to be a 1/2 inch shim, 1.5 inch wearing course. But as you're heading towards Route 100, I'm sure we all know that one section of the right-hand lane that's real rough and it's actually higher than the rest of the road. So we're going to have to mill that one down to get our profile back and to take out some of that nastiness before we pave it. So we will be doing around 100 feet of milling on that section. And that section will be just under $27,000. The next section is the remainder of Bridge Street from Route 100 all the way down to Cadiz Falls Road. And that is going to be a 1/2 inch shim and 1.5 inch wearing course. That does include the bridge over Lake Lamoille. And this section is subject to change with the treatment that we do here. So that bridge is in need of some work as well. The abutments need work. The bridge deck has been exposed and the bridge deck needs work. We don't have the funding secured for that right now. I do have a grant out to the state. We're waiting on funding. So whether or not we receive that grant may change what we do here. We're talking a swing of $5,000 to $7,000 reduction in cost if we decide to hold off and skip the bridge for now. My concern with the bridge is that we have an exposed concrete bridge deck. And with those concrete bridge decks, it's important to keep them sealed up from the water. And if the water gets on it, gets pounded into it, it deteriorates the bridge deck. And repairing the bridge deck is significantly more expensive than the, say, $5,000 to $7,000 we pay to pave it. So by spending, $5,000 to $7,000 on some asphalt that gets ripped up in a year or two, it could save us $20,000 or more in bridge repairs. So we currently have it on here to mill it and pave it with the understanding that it is going to have to get torn up again in the near future, but it will reduce the overall cost. So if we do end up receiving that grant, we may decide to remove the milling and paving of that bridge if we know we're going to fix the bridge soon. So that section is subject to change. Right now, it's right around $70,000. Any questions on that bridge or that section?
Do we have other bridges we've done that kind of thing with?
I'm not aware of any. I think, the Mac Miller Bridge, we paved that knowing that the bridge deck needed repair. Unfortunately, that bridge has fallen even further into disrepair and is close to the point of a full replacement. It doesn't fit well within the Class 2 structures grant.
Got some holes to avoid for sure.
Yeah. Next on the section is Stancliffe Road. And in your memo here, I apologize, there is a typo. We're going to machine pave 1 inch shim and 1.5 inch wearing course. This is similar to that real rough section of Lower Elmore Mountain Road, but we're just going to be paving half the road. Half of it is in pretty good shape. We're going to be going from Route 100 to about the halfway point. So you'll notice it says 0.4 miles and it also says shim and pave entire length of the road, and the road's longer than that.
So the 0.4 is correct.
The 0.4 is correct, and it'll be the rough section. We'll get to a pavement joint, and from that pavement joint up to Lower Elmore Mountain Road is in good shape. So we'll stick to the rough stuff on that one. So that one comes in at just under $62,000 for Stancliffe Road.
So adding all these up really quickly in my head, I get just a little over $800,000.
Yeah, so Pike Industries is the low bidder, just under 85 bucks a ton, $6 a square yard to cold plane, and a buck 75 per square yard to reclaim and fine grade, for a total of $818,658. So you see the other bids we got here, Hutchins was quite a bit more. They came in at 975,000. FW Whitcomb even more at 1,007,863. And SD Ireland was most expensive this year at 1 million and just under $40,000. So some notes, all bids are equivalent, including traffic control and the 12-month warranty. And to your point, Don, the scope of work was designed around an $800,000 budget. That was what we did all our budgetary pricing on. And that's kind of the number that we've been talking about needing to spend every year. Recent increases in oil prices have increased the cost of this project. As this, the situation in Iran develops, it has a direct impact on our oil prices, which is a big part of paving.
Are those increases reflected in these numbers?
They are. Yeah.
Is it possible that they'll continue to go up?
It is possible that they'll continue to go up. So the next one here is all bids include a two-way asphalt price adjustment. So all these bids, they do they use a price index that's currently at $730 for the price of liquid asphalt. And if the price of asphalt goes up, the price can go up, but it's a two-way deal. So if the price of asphalt goes down, the price that we're paying will also go down.
So if the price does go up, it would be most concerning for us. Would we just do less of this?
We could potentially cut a section. And speaking with the contractors, if the price were to go up, they would expect it to be somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 neighborhood. And with Pike
for the entire
project, $10,000 to $15,000 increase for the entire project, but it could also swing the other way. It could also come down $10,000 to $15,000. Pike Industries, the low bidder on this, they're estimating, and we all know how paving schedules go with previous years. They're estimating a June paving timeframe as of now. So with that being said, we're over that 800,000 number. We have a paving grant submitted to VTrans for 200,000. I was expecting a moderate chance of award on that one. I spoke with the VTrans office, and out of the 28 towns in this district, we ranked 14th in order, if you will, to receive this grant. Or they use several different matrices, but one of the matrices that they use is the amount of dollars in grants that the town has received versus the amount of miles of Class 2 roadway in that town. And then that is one part of their award matrix. The other is, all sorts. I'm not sure of all of them, but the grant submittal, the need. I did get a call from VTrans late this afternoon, and they unofficially told me that we will be receiving this grant in an amount of $200,000.
Nice.
So we don't have it signed in hand yet, but we were told that we will be getting the grant. So that 200,000 will come off. So that if we were to, I'll go right into the next. We recommend that the board award the full contract to Pike Industries. We put together a solid funding plan that draws from the Bridge and Infrastructure Fund, LOT revenue, and potential grant award. The Bridge and Infrastructure Fund currently has $167,455, and we expect to add at least $233,500 from the 2-cent special article passed as part of the fiscal year 26-27 budget. LOT revenue will round out the budget with the added potential for a $200,000 VTrans Class 2 roadways grant to further offset our costs. So with now knowing that we'll be receiving this grant, that $818,658 is reduced to a $618,658 cost to the taxpayer. So with our Bridge and Infrastructure Fund at just under 401,000, if we were to save 75,000 and for the sidewalk plans that we have, that would put us at needing to spend around $292,000 out of local options tax revenue in order to keep up with our $800,000 a year plans.
Okay. Well, I'd say that's better than some of the numbers we were kicking around many months ago. Yeah. Questions from the board? I assume we're gonna need a motion.
I move to award the full paving and reclaiming contract to Pike Industries as a successful bidder for a contract price of $818,658.96.
Okay,
Based on the bid results I reviewed.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? To push the motion forward for discussion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion by Richard and a second by Leah. The motion hasn't passed yet. It's just up for discussion. Any comments from the board? Any questions for Jordan?
Sure, I'll go. So Jordan, what's the fallback plan? Although it sounds like you've got at least verbal assurance of the V-Trans grant for 200 grand. If that for some reason doesn't happen, what's the plan?
That would be more money coming out of the local options tax revenues.
Okay, all right. Payment schedule. When we sign a contract, what's our payment schedule with, assuming the motion's Pike?
Pike has confirmed that they are willing to negotiate terms. Those terms will all hinge upon when they start the project. And if they end up paving late summer, then, you know, we're getting, I think you all probably know better than I when we receive our first LOT payment.
Mid to late October.
Yeah, it's what the quarter ends
September 30th.
July, August, September 30th. Yeah, so mid to late October.
So depending on when it ends, we know that the contractor is willing to negotiate terms. I know that Brent and Tina have been having negotiation or been having conversations, and they are confident that they can fund this. And I believe there are some talks about, you know, as I guess I can't really say.
Here's my hesitation. Everything you've done is great, Jordan. It's not that. It's one of the conversations we've had with you that you asked for, and I agree with you, is if we had a chunk of change sitting so that you could bid at the right time, knowing that that money was there, you could probably get maybe better prices and certainly better timeline because kind of first in the queue. And at least it was my impression that we were going to try and begin the LOT process by starting to build up a bit of a reserve before we go. Because not actually expending money out of LOT. If we're talking about 290,000, again, no adjustments for up charges or down charges or any of that other stuff. That's about what I would think we had $1.2 million estimated for LOT for a full year by our consultant.
Our conservative estimate. Yeah.
Yeah, which is in quarters, that's about 300 grand a quarter. So we're starting off basically pre-committing right now as a board. Roughly the first quarter's payment, which we don't know whether it's going to be 270, 400, who the heck knows. I agree with you, Don. He's always said he's been conservative, and he's always said his numbers have been conservative. But we're starting off on, it feels to me as a bit of the left foot instead of starting to put some of that money aside. The other side of me says, we're in the middle of this project. How in the heck are we going to slow this down? It's only going to cost us more on the backside when we wait and say, George, you can only do $400,000 worth of work or $600,000 worth of work. That's $200,000 of work that needs to get done this year, and I know that.
Yeah, and it's work that, as I've shared in my previous presentation, as you can see here with the difference between these sections, how drastically the price increases when you have to reclaim it and you can't shim it anymore. And some of these sections, all the sections that are getting a 1-inch shim, if we don't give them a 1-inch shim now, they're going to need a reclaim down the road. And on top of that, we're seeing a steady increase in the cost of asphalt year after year.
Yeah, I hear you, John, and I agree with you. Everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me. Other than I'm hesitant. even though I know what I'm saying is going against good idea of what to do with the roads, I'm not sure that it's fiscally the way we were planning to go. But it struggles. And I wish Brent was here, but I know he's not. I looked at the financials that were handed to us to the board for the end of March, and we are 3.5% above budget. So we're at like 78.5%. We should be at 75%. If we don't reduce that percentage by the end of the year back down to just 100, not 3.65% overspending, that puts us over budget on the expenditure side by 397,000.
But none of this will be coming out of this year's
No, but it
budget.
affects our fund balance
Okay.
in 25, 26. And this is not the revenue pipe. This is one side. We've only got 150,000 in the unallocated or uncommitted reserve fund based on the audit of 2025. And that's way too low. And everybody agrees with that. And now I'm just concerned that we're 3/4 of the way through the year and we're over budget on the expenditures.
Mhm.
What the last quarter of and this is none of you. I mean, it's you as a department head, but this is not, I'm not putting this on you.
Yeah.
397,000, if we're at that number, that scares the heck out of me. To close 25, 26, and Jason, I know, I'm not gonna ask you to explain this to me because that's not what you've been working on. That's all the reasons why I'm pausing. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but boy, I got some yellow lights going off. Not necessarily red lights, but yellow lights going off in my head. None of which I like. I wish I've had a track full of green lights, but I haven't got them. And it's not you. And it's not your work.
So George, we've been talking about the LOT. LOT giving us a payment in the middle of October, mid to late October, which is going to come very close to covering this with the other funds that we've been talking about. And then we get another check in January.
Yep, we will.
And then we get another check in April.
Yep.
So assuming that the numbers are right, we're going to get, we're going to have an idea of what the numbers are in October. And I know October's a long way away,
Yeah, not really.
but well, a long way away in the sense of from tonight's meeting. But we do have these 3 big checks. Now we've been really clear with the public that when it comes to LOT, the infrastructure was number 1 on our list. I certainly was number 1 on my list, and roads and sidewalks were right up there. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just, if half the lights were green, half the lights were yellow, I'd feel better, but I don't see anything but yellow lights in what I'm looking at.
You don't see the rest of the LOT money coming in later on in the year being a green light?
I think it may be, but if we'd like to have Jordan be able to go out to bid next year, to maybe get us better numbers as opposed to going out and when did these go out? When did they go out, Jordan? They came in on the 10th.
They came in on the 10th.
Going out in January or February. We don't have the money to say to Jordan, we can afford another $800,000 bid, because if we've already put in 300 to this project, we pick up another 6 in the last 2 quarters of 27. Are we just avoiding the problem for next year? We're moving the problem down the road. No pun intended.
And the alternative would the alternative be to lower this project, to decrease the size of this project?
You potentially could, but when we're talking about the 5-year plan and catching up, it's, that you might save some this year, but now it's a 6-year plan and year 6 is more expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Would it give you comfort if the motion was amended to include something along the lines of being contingent on the contractor accepting favorable terms?
It would be better. It's for me, we're spending money we don't know we have yet. I mean, we're going to get something. I'm not questioning whether LLT is going to come and whether they're going to come in fairly large numbers. But we're banking a lot on everything falling in the right place. And the community is behind LOT. When you look at all the votes on LOT, they were the closest one on sales, but it was a reasonably good margin, and the other two were significant. I mean, the town was behind LOT in general. And I don't think it's gonna change iota people's spending in town, which is what our consultant based their estimates on, was past history. It just feels like if we don't jump the gun now, we're putting ourselves behind the 8 ball in year 6. And I hear, and I know, and I agree with it. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm putting out my concerns. I'm not sure that I'm gonna vote yes or no on it, but I'm just putting out my concerns for people to hear.
I hear what you're saying. I think we probably all run our own family budgets, very similar to the way you're talking. Not start spending money we don't have. Again, I guess my question would be, is there an alternative to do some fraction of this project? So rather than an $800,000 project to do I'm just going to throw out a number, $600,000 project this summer.
You could,
Would we have to send all this back out to bid again?
that would be up for debate. We could potentially ask the low bidder if we could remove a section if their price would stand. But when you're talking projects like this, it's a bulk discount. The more you get, the better your price is. So there's a chance that we cut a section, go back to the contractor, and if they say, oh yeah, no problem, then we could move forward. But if they say, oh, that's going to change our price, then I would think we would need to go back out to bid.
And without picking any of them, let's just take the 5, 6A, 6B, and 7. On my eye, that tells me that's about $200,000. 23 grand, 67 grand, we're at 90, another 61. We're at 151, another 20, we're at 171. We're kind of getting to the 200,000. That's four rows we're now talking about, just picking those 4. Or chopping one of the bigger ones out. I mean, you could pick the Randolph Road, but I don't think the Randolph Road is what we want to pick.
No, you definitely don't, because that's a class 2. So
Yeah.
that's going to be part of this grant, the Bridge Street and Randolph.
I'm just fishing numbers off the Pike bid to see what $200,000 less to get the $600,000 gets to. And none of those answers are very good.
No, I don't. And I mean, you say you take out the 200,000 now and it's 250 next year and it's 300 the year after that.
Yeah.
And
I hear it, Jordan. I hear it.
So the LOT estimate is 300,000 per quarter. That's the estimate. And we don't know what that number really is. I mean, we all acknowledge the fact that we don't really know what it is. We're looking at an $800,000 project, 200,000 coming from VTrans. What was the sidewalk cost?
that we had budgeted 75,000
75,000.
out of the bridge and infrastructure for sidewalks.
So it sounds like we're going to get the $200,000 for the grant. That brings it down to 600. With the money that's in bridge and infrastructure and the 2 cents that the voters have already passed, that's 400,000. So we're on the hook for 275 when we add in the sidewalks. If the LOT estimate is correct, it's going to cover that with a little change left over, $25,000 left over, which isn't much, but. And then I would just say that, and then we've got those to rebuild the bridge and infrastructure fund. We've got the LOT money coming in January, and we got the LOT money coming in April. I agree with you. I mean, we can't run that fund dry. That is concerning. Go ahead, Judy.
So I just looked at Jeff Carr's report. That was 984,000. It's a year and a half ago, and it was a conservative estimate. So it's closer to $1 million than it is to the 900.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. So, yeah, so 300,000 and a little, 300,000 and change is what we're estimating. I don't know, other men, Richard.
We got a 20% difference between Pike's bid and the high bid, right there. And we all know that these prices are not going to go down if we go next year. Then that's what I'm looking at. I think George's done a good job at getting these numbers together and explaining them. I think I know it's, well, I'm right there with you, but I'm also like. Bring up your home budget, right? If you don't do a project, if you put a roof on, then you're dealing with replacing sheetrock because you got a leaky roof or whatever. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. And I know every time I drive down the Bridge Street Bridge, I'm like, I'm frustrated by the fact that I don't want to have us get in a position where we have to spend, $150,000 redecking that bridge. So if we don't do on all these different pieces, you can make an argument for every single one of them that they need to get done sooner rather than later. And we have, Jordan's provided us with a solid plan for the next 5 years.
I agree.
So I'm there, but I think that this is a pill to swallow. And the difference, I mean, that's a huge difference in the bids. We're not talking $30,000.
Nope.
Between the high and low. That's huge. And if we take anything off, to Jordan's point, it's Mike going to say, well, we'll cut that off, but you're only going to save us $70,000. It's going to still, you're going to save 50. It's, who knows what tomorrow's going to bring.
Leah, Rose?
I would say I've driven down the Stancliff Road and it is in very rough shape of all of those. And I think I'm in the same place everybody else is only going to get more expensive down the road. And then the concern about the bridge between the turn on to Brooklyn Street and Katie's Falls, is that the bridge that you're talking about?
It's not the Fave Road, not the one close to
Right,
town,
it's
the
the
next one on the other side
Yeah.
of 100. Yeah.
Again, anything, if that, as you were saying, if you lose the decking and that gets even further deterioration, then it's going to be a lot more expensive to fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the same place that George is sitting as well. I do think the LOT estimates were conservative, and I do think this is a risk that we can choose to take, knowing that we may have to course correct, and that would be even a more difficult conversation later in this year. And that's a risk that we can take. But that'll be a very difficult conversation, because kind of going through the various, where could that possibly come from? I don't have any answer for that either.
Leah, can I interrupt? John might help us. When do these bids need to be responded to? What's your timeline for saying yay, nay to them?
I don't have a firm timeline. The Pike bid technically already, it needs to be accepted within 7 days. So technically it already expired. They have really short deadlines on it. I spoke with Pike Industries and said, we're going to the select board. And they said, that's fine. We'll wait. So I think, if we wait too long, it may have to go back out to bid.
It's 2 weeks too long.
It's tough to say.
I will say that the construction business was the business my father was in, and they're trying to plan what their season is going to look like. So waiting too long means they've found somebody else to work for.
The other yellow light that's going off in my head, and it may not be going off in anybody else's, and it may not even be a good light because it's Jason that's here, and I wish it was Brent. Not for any other reason other than Brent would be probably able to give me a better answer. Is the March expenditure report that is over its target by 3.65%, and that doesn't sound like much unless you apply it on a 10 million, almost an $11 million budget. And then that turns into 370,000, and we don't have 370,000, would then go in deficit. And that's going to be a hard conversation when we have to say to the taxpayers, guess what? We're in the hole. We've got to raise this money before we even talk to you about next year's budget. Or we have the hard conversation about pulling that out of LOT. And that's ugly too.
If I may.
Sure, John.
I understand what you're saying with the current money in the bank, but we know that 2 cents has passed.
Mhm.
We know that we're going to be
Yep.
getting that revenue.
Yep.
We know that conservatively, we're getting the LOT 300,000. If the contractor would agree to terms to where it waits till that money comes in, does that alleviate your concerns about going into a deficit?
No, because the deficit has nothing to do with that. The deficit is in 25-26. If it is a deficit, I'm looking at the 25-26 budget.
And thinking if we're going to need LOT
Which
to
will close
cover
in
that.
June. And hopefully Tina's got a plan to make sure that we close surplus between the revenues and the expenditures. And I'm looking at one side of it. But if we can't close it, or she can't close it, the town can't close it, we're gonna have to, we'll go deficit for the fiscal year. And that rolls over through the audit, and then is almost the first thing you gotta deal with, because you can't continue to carry a deficit. So it has to be, in my mind, it has to be dealt with in the 28 budget development.
And you're thinking that it might be taken care of by taking money out of the bridge and infrastructure or LOT?
It could be. I think, again, I won't speak to bridge and infrastructure. I don't know. I don't have at my fingertips what the requirements are of shifting money out of infrastructure. I think there's enough room in the policy that was just passed in LOT to draw money out of LOT to do both the 290,000 or whatever for the project, for the roads, and the deficit. But again, now we've drawn out money twice before we really have. We're spending ahead of saving, and it seems that that's a backwards way of doing it, and I'm concerned about it.
So George, at 3.6, 3.7% over expenditure, does that take into account money in the unallocated fund?
No,
How much money is in the unallocated fund?
150,000, I believe, give or take a few pennies.
150?
That's what we closed. That's the audit number from FY20.
So it could potentially cover half of that. Potentially.
It could. Yeah. And again, this is a one-sided.
Yeah, our revenue could be up potentially.
Yeah, but right now, the revenue is, I can't look at the revenue and understand it, to be
Yeah.
simple about it, and I don't want to get into details. But it's not, this number I can understand. The revenues, I need some assistance.
So it's actually a little bit closer to, rather than 3.637, it's actually a little bit closer to 1.18. If you include the unallocated funds.
Yeah, that's true. But by doing that, Don, you are literally saying we're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, I understand that.
And that's not where an organization should be in the least.
So our other alternative is to reduce the scope of this project by about $200,000. Or to ask Pike to wait 2 weeks till we can get Tina and we get Brent in here and we can have this conversation about what this really all means, what that plan is going forward. I think I know the answer to this question, but you haven't spoken to Brent about this.
No, expenditure. If Brendan would be good. And actually pick this up on Friday too. So
I'm worried about what Rose just said too, we tell them, give us 2 more weeks, and 2 more weeks.
yeah.
They're now working for another town.
Which is where it's going.
And that's what I was saying about the 20% difference between down and the high bit. If we don't kind of barrel with that, right? Yeah, I'll pave your roads, but it's gonna cost you another 300,000 more than what it was in April.
Yes, I hear you, Richard, and I agree with you. I agree with Rose. I agree with Leo.
Technically, we're meeting again next Monday.
That's correct. We are.
So I'm wondering if we, again, don't know how I feel about this, trim it back to 600K, see if Pike, what they would come in at for that. And we can discuss it next Monday, which we only use a week of time. I don't know.
Yeah, we do have a meeting next week.
Brent is away all week, right?
I'm trying to text between Tina and Brent right now,
Hmm.
to see if I can't get somebody available to talk.
Is
if
Brent
that helps.
gone all week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is there any sort of contingency you could put on the motion that would alleviate concerns?
Well, I guess
Not sure we can do that without making a commitment to Pike. Which would commit us to Pike.
Leah, I like the idea of waiting till next Monday.
I mean, the reality is we don't have the money in hand. So technically, we cannot afford an $800,000 project. What we can afford is a $600,000 project.
I would say better yet, we don't have the answers to some of our questions.
you could table this to the end of the evening, and I can see after zoning if Brent has an opportunity to text. Jordan's giving you his presentation. And if Brent, if you guys table it till the end of the evening, maybe Brent would be able to speak with you before you make a decision tonight. If that helps, I don't know if that helps, I don't know.
A good answer for me on the concern, my concern around deficit, whether it's just we know a lot more than you and we're good with it, and that's fine. But what I'm seeing right now in the report makes me nervous as hell. But I'm more than willing to be convinced to table that nervousness by Brent and Tina.
If we table this till the end of the evening, we'll go through the rest of the meeting,
Yeah.
that Brent gets back to me. Then you can at least get him to call in maybe. And,
I want to do this.
Yeah.
But
I think everybody wants.
there's a lot of hot holes around here as far as I'm concerned, and I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I see one hand up on the screen. Josh, are you weighing in on this topic?
I will if you'll hear me, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Just a couple things. I'm not gonna speak.
Josh Goldstein.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joshua Goldstein, Planning Commission Chair. I won't speak to any of George's concerns about having money in hand, but I'm in the industry and I think Jordan's done a phenomenal job. All I will do is comment a couple things. Number one, bids don't come in this far apart unless the contractor wants the work. Pike has a plant in Newport. They're probably using their their local guys. Like they want this work. That's clear. I think their willingness to meet with terms is a huge value. And my last comment will be, if you try to reduce this scope or you ask these bidders to reduce scope, who would probably be only Pike based on the numbers that came in, kind of a rule of thumb is, sure, I'll do less, but I'm not going to take it out of my margin. So your value per dollar is going to go up if you reduce the scope. I get it. It's all moot. If the money's not there to pay for it, all of this is moot. But it sounds like to me, one guy listening in, most of the funds are there and it's shaky. And George, I completely empathize with all of your comments, the way you completely empathize with everybody else's. The value seems to be there. And we've talked about schedule. Rose mentioned it. Like 2 weeks from now, these guys might be like, all right, well, we got a big hole in June, so let's fill that. Paving season in Vermont is short and it crunches real tight in the fall because everybody's trying to get done, and all of a sudden extends to next year. And it's just, I don't know. It's just messy. Again, one guy looking in, the package looks really clean and it sounds like most of the funding is there, but I understand all the apprehensions. I would pay attention to the value you're getting now versus what you would get with any sort of change whatsoever. It's a dynamic change.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much. It sounds like Judy's on the phone with somebody, I don't know who, but. Is the board comfortable with tabling this for going through the? Are we okay with tabling this?
If we're waiting a couple hours, unless Jordan, I mean, if Jordan wants to stay, that's fine. I hate to hold Jordan for an hour and a half.
No, I mean, it's important. I'll stick around.
I'm okay with waiting for, see if we get more information, that's great, as far as I'm concerned.
Any other comments from the audience? Yeah, come on up. Just identify yourself and your residence.
I just had a math question. We're talking about $1 million and then we're talking about quarterly 300,000. But that would be 1,000,002.
Yeah, we're talking, the estimate for the LOT was 1.2 to 1.3. You're on the phone with, okay, great.
70 something she was talking about.
The first year that we do the LOT, this is true of all communities. We have to, it has to go through the legislature, has to be passed at town meeting. So the first year we only have 3 quarters available to us in the fiscal year.
Got it.
So we're losing a quarter right now. So that's why that's the way it is. Okay, any other comments? Do we want to wait for Judy? I was talking to Brent right now.
Next article is gonna be a long conversation.
It's going to be a long conversation.
The third one's not too long. We wanted to jump around.
Let's do that. There's a good idea. Thank you, Chief. Okay, so if the board's okay with it, I will move to new business number 3. You okay with that, Tyler? I'm looking at you because you're gonna be waiting too. Okay, so so I'm gonna
We find the third one's fine with tabling.
table
If it's
number
more
1.
convenient to pick Jordan's back up, I can go last.
Okay,
Because I know Jordan's was first on it, so.
I'm gonna table number 1. I'm gonna jump to number 3, and when Judy comes back in, after 3, we may go right back to Jordan. So number 3 is adopt and sign the local emergency management plan. And this is something that we do yearly. And I have talked to the chief about this, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to read through it. It's my understanding there are no substantive changes here. The updates are really just new names and new positions and new emails, perhaps new phone numbers, perhaps, but the document itself has not changed. Anything you'd like to say about it, Jason?
No, that's correct. We just updated the personnel. Chief DeGregorio is now the Assistant Emergency Management Director. He took over for Andy Glover after he retired last year. So that's really the only change other than just personnel, like updating the select board and highway department, those changes.
I just say to the public, it is a nice document to read, to get a really nice feeling for all the individuals that are in town that would be involved if there were a substantial emergency in town, a flooding, perhaps a significant flooding. A whole bunch of things could fall into this category, but it is a nice read to know that we have a number of individuals.
I do. Yeah,
So
yeah. I got one question before I leave this for chief. I can't find it in the doc, but the People's Academy is identified as an emergency site and it says no generator. There used to be a generator there. Is that generator no longer functional?
Not to my knowledge, yeah. I don't think it is
Okay,
functional.
all right, thanks.
At least enough to run a shelter.
Okay.
It may keep their IT going or something.
Okay,
I would entertain a motion then at this point.
I move to approve and adopt the updated local emergency management plan for the town of Morristown as submitted and authorize Brent Raymond to sign.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
So a motion by Richard and a second by
Leah.
Leah. Are we good?
I'm gonna vote and then I'll go. No, I haven't been that. Do you vote and then I'll go.
Okay, any discussion regarding the plan?
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you to all
A
the
lot of
people that
work.
have put work into this. It's obviously a very important document. All those in favor of approving the local emergency plan for 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
That would be unanimous. I am going to, can we just take a quick recess for 5 minutes? And a recess for 5 minutes? Everyone okay with that? Okay. I think everyone knows why.
We're just sort of.
Hang on one second.
Yeah. For folks online, we're recessing for 5 minutes. We're hopefully going back to new business number 1.
All right, you should be good.
So we're going to recess for an additional 5 minutes. We're not quite there yet, just for those of you online. So I'm anticipating at 6:45 we'll start.
Josh, are you guys hearing us online, all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll just hang around for the zoning discussion then.
So,
Okay, I can unmute.
thank you very much. Okay, so I just spoke with Brent. George, he said if you want to go ahead and do the motion tonight on the paving and condition it on seeing the financials on Wednesday.
I'm good,
Okay,
but thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, so we are reconvening right now at 6:41. The select board has been recessed for approximately, I'd say 7 or 8 minutes at this point, but it is 6:42 right now. So I'm going to go back to number 1, review of paving bids and award a contractor. George, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. I still have my reservations around the touching the LOT, but I agree with Richard that, and Jordan, that if we don't advance the LOT funds, we're turning it into a 6-year plan, and that's going to be more expensive. And if we start to delay with Pike, we may lose them in the bidders. So the concern I had around deficit has been explained to me by Tina and Brent. There are some expenditures in here that I would never have considered grant. They are included in the bottom line, but they are grant funds, grant expenditures. So that's $500,000, and when that's backed out, we're not looking at 78.5% anymore.
We're still in the black.
We're still in the black. So that yellow light has been extinguished.
Okay.
The others are still yellow lights, but I'm willing to run those yellow lights because I think it's the important thing to do.
Okay, great. We do have a motion.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have any further discussion regarding the motion? Do you want to reread that motion, or I guess I can? So the motion is to award the full paving and reclaiming contract to Pike Industries as a successful bidder for the contract price of $818,000, $658.96 based on the bid results as reviewed. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
And that would be unanimous. And by the way, Judy, while you were out of the room, we dealt with number 3. And Richard made the motion. Leah was the second. And we approved it unanimously.
With the motion that was presented.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
So we're going to go to new business number 2 to review the proposed changes to the zoning bylaws. And Tyler's here to speak to this. Before Tyler gets going, I just want to make a couple of comments, and that is I want to send my very sincere thanks to the Planning Commission, Josh Goldstein, who's the chair, Eddie N. Hancock, John Meyer, Wally Reeves, and Jamie Morris for all the work that they have done. For those of us on the board, we had a lot of reading to do this weekend. There's a lot of changes here. Many of them would be considered minor, but there are some changes in there that might be on the bigger side, and Tyler's going to speak to this. This is work that's been going on for a couple of years. This is not new. It's, Todd Thomas has his, fingers on these changes. Dave White, planner that we contracted out of, Chittenden County, had his fingers on this. Ron Roginski did, our town attorney did, and of course, Tyler, Mesha, and the planning commission, as I just said. So I do want to just appreciate all the work that they've done. I think the five of us appreciate it because we've read through it, but I just want to make that, put that on the record. Tyler, as you know, I'm really looking for you to just, not go through every detail here because there's so much here, but rather to draw our attention to what you and the commission feel are the significant changes in the document.
Well, I hate to be the last thing between you and adjournment, so I'm going to do the best that I can to move this along as fast as I can. So I appreciate everybody giving me the opportunity here to speak to this tonight. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Tyler Mesha. I'm the zoning and planning administrator. I've been serving the town of Morristown for almost a year now. It'll be a year May 20th. Actually, my first day on the job was when they planning commission passed the last round of this before that you guys ultimately decided that you wanted us to do some more work on. So what I have for you here tonight, and most of you guys have seen it, or those following along online, is I prepared a red line version of the bylaw changes, which is a comparison of the 2023 bylaw and the 2026 bylaw. I have also prepared a memo to try and translate the changes because, as has been mentioned, this has been gone on for 3 years, seen 4 different hands. A lot of things have been changed with this. Some of them predate me. So what I'm going to go through tonight is not read my memo, obviously word for word, because it's quite extensive, but I'm going to pick and choose. Very quick disclaimer up front. This is still a live document. We may find errors in this. You may find spelling mistakes, miscitings. I've done my best to comb through this as well, but this is still very much a live document at this point. And also, given that this has been gone on for so long, there may be some changes that were made that while I pulled them out, I may not directly be able to articulate them because predates my purview. And I'll note that if those questions come up. But jumping right into it, I'm going to first draw your section we're going to skip over the 100 sections and get right to section 201. And that is going to be 201C. So those following along is the second page on the memo. And then it's 201. All the sections were renumbered from what you saw into kind of a standard number format. That changes throughout the document. So just for those following along at home.
So the numbers you're referring to are all the new numbers.
These are all the new numbering schemes. Yeah. Not the language. If it's black, it's the same, except for the numbering change. Let me see here. 204, we want to do C. All right. So C notes that makes it clear that variances in the flood hazard district are not going to be issued because that's not an effective way to deal with flood hazards. It kind of flies in the face of some of the stuff you want to do for like NFIP standards. Oh, excuse me, 41 on your packet.
I'm pointing it out to you. These are the numbers of the pages. That you
Oh.
can-
That's what I meant from the packet numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not the point. Then you can find where you are. I'm not exactly sure. Yes,
So my apologies for that. So if you're following along in your packets, that would be, it's going to be page 13 and it's going to be 204C. So this basically makes it clear that we're not going to issue variances for projects that happen, work occurring in the flood hazard overlay district because it's generally discouraged by NFIP. While it's technically allowed, it's not really good floodplain management practices. Variances are almost impossible to get anyways. And the flood hazard overlay district in particular, they should be doubly more so. Moving on in that same section, this was quite a bit of work, and that's going to be section 204 E. And what that is, I'm going to refer you now is to these two pieces of paper here. You have one that's going to say section 204.E. That is the new 2026 use table and dimensional table. Section 204.5A is the 2023 one. And my apologies for having to do it this way. I tried to do it in the track changes in the document, and as you could see, it just scrambles the table so you can't read them. So what I'm going to do is spend some time and just kind of go through all the changes that were in here. So first thing that was noted, you'll notice that accessory uses and accessory apartment was changed to accessory use and accessory structures. And this is just to make it clear that accessory structures are also allowed on all properties, right? Agriculture, accessory on-farm business was added to account for the fact that state statute has allowed for these types of businesses, and the definition of on-farm business was added to the section 900, which is the definition section of the bylaw. This one I am going to read pretty much verbatim or hit on it because there are quite a few changes in this section.
Yeah.
Airport landing strip or helipad, that was added to the use table because we have one essentially already. We have an airport that exists, so it doesn't really make sense to not have that use as a use here because we have one. And we also did restrict it to some smaller zones. Also the hospital zone, we wanted to make sure that if Copley decides they need to have a helipad, that they have the ability to have a helipad for medical evacuations. Bar and brewery were just combined, just for simplicity's sake. Building height above 30 feet was added and replaces buildings above 35 feet. And it's a permitted use in the CB, COM, IND, HOS districts. My apologies to those following along. If you want to read those, you can check the bylaw and find what the definitions mean. I'm just not going, for sake of brevity, I'm not going to expound on those too much tonight. It's also a conditional use in the HDR, MDR, LDR, and RRA districts. Building height above 40 feet was added to replace structures above 40 feet. It's a conditional use in the following districts: CB, COM, and IND in the hospital district. There's not a height cap on that, but any building that is above that has to get sign off by the Division of Fire Safety, which more than likely is going to require sprinkling and all that other stuff. It's also important to note that because of the Home Act and Act 181, any existing building by right is allowed an extra story, regardless of whatever height limit we set, if it's for affordable housing, and it can be sprinkled for fire safety. That's state law. There's nothing that we can really do about that. Clubs private, that was just changed to private clubs. Commercial use was commercial light industry. I'm going to skip the drive-through. That was really only restricted. That was restricted to just the commercial district. So it was, it's not allowed in the CB district anymore. Dwelling unit, single family. This is a bigger change, was removed and replaced with dwelling unit 1 and 2 units in ADUs. This was done as a direct result of Act 47 and 181, which prohibits single family only zoning. So anywhere is by right, you can build a single family home, you are allowed to have a duplex. So it's important to bear that in mind. Dwelling units, 3 and 4 units was added to the use table. It's a permitted use in the CB, COM, HOS, HDR, MDR, and LDR. So the reason for that was being added is, again, if it's connected to, and this is specifically for class 1 development, which is being connected to municipal water and sewer. If you're connected by municipal water and sewer, by right, you're allowed to have up to 4 units of housing inside of any building. Dwelling units 5 or more was also added. It was added as a permitted use in the CB district, and it's conditional use in the COM, hospital, and the HDR district. Let me see. Now this is a big new one. This actually has its own section in the bylaws. Multiple principal uses on a lot. So this was added because currently in the bylaw, well, we have buildings and properties that have multiple principal uses on them. We technically don't have any way to permit them, though that they exist. So what this was added to essentially say, here is how we are going to permit multiple principal uses and multiple principal buildings on a lot. It's a conditional use in the CB, COM. It's an allowed use in the CB, COM, IND, and HOS districts. It is a permitted or conditional use depending on the project. It is explicitly not allowed in the MDR, LDR, RRA districts, and we'll go into that in more detail. Recovery, I'm skipping down a little bit. Recovery residences were added to the use table per 24 VSA 4413. We cannot ban these from the town, but we can restrict what districts that they're in, but we have to allow them in some fashion. Let me see here. There were some changes that were made to the short-term rental rules. So this was a fairly, it's a substantive change in that it was currently our short-term rental regulations are housed in the definition section. They're not in their own section of the bylaws. That's been changed. They now have their own section. So the regulations have been transferred to there. And it's changed, and there's a distinction to be made between 4 or fewer. 4 or fewer, essentially a permitted use by right. We don't regulate them anyway. You don't have to come in and pull a permit for a short-term rental for, 4 or fewer. 5 to 8, you do. And if you're over 8, you're considered a hotel or in use. We're good.
5 to 8's conditional.
5 to 8 is permitted, a mix of permitted and conditional depending on the district, but we're going to go into that in more detail. But that was added to the use table again, just to clarify that this is a use. So that way, when you look at this, you can figure out kind of what you are and aren't allowed to do. Let me see here. Minimum lot size is section 204F. So if you flip it around, you'll note the dimensional tables for both of those papers are on the back. You'll notice the size reductions there. The biggest drop is in the LDR. You went from 10,000 to 8,000 square feet, your minimum lot size. Lot frontage has been dropped a little bit in certain cases, but not a ton of changes outside of that. Going on to section 206. It's 206A. This section notes that a building rendering may be required to ensure compliance with design review criteria. It does exempt dwelling units 1 and 2 from the design review portion of that, but it still gives me the ability to request a elevation for the structure. As a note, any building I permit, whether it's a shed or a house, I typically require exterior elevations for. And they can vary in sophistication from building plans to somebody just drawing something, if it's like a shed or something like that. Or in some cases, a single family home, if it's in the middle of like the RRA where there's no design review criteria or things like that. But I wanted to make sure when we did this that it still retained my ability to request that of applicants, because I do. All right. 206B, the Bs essentially go over a lot of changes, like design review criteria changes that were added for dwelling units that are 5 units or 3 and 4 units in any business, excluding a home occupation. We went through some of these exist already. Some of them were changed. The one I am going to highlight is building size maximums, except within this commercial, industrial, hospital zones. The width of any structure shall not is limited to 68 feet or less. Yeah, 64 feet or less in its depth, and it's no more than 150%. 68 feet in width is 150% of the depth of the nearest of the largest 2 buildings that directly abut it. And the intent of this is to kind of slow down the growth in larger buildings over time if buildings do enlarge. That 150% obviously gets a little bit bigger over time, but it's designed to kind of put a little bit of a governor on that to slow that transition over time. Should buildings around there start to slowly increase. Right. One thing I will draw your attention to is section 206C. This was a new section that was added to encourage cottage court style developments. So what that is essentially you have like rather than having all of your units in one building, what you have is, let's say, a common area like a green or something like that, and you had the buildings around, like ringing around it, kind of in a townhome style development with some staggered design features. So that section was added specifically to encourage that type of denser housing. Moving along, 207, I'm going to draw your attention to 207C5. This was simply noted to that front setbacks could be measured from the outside edge of the sidewalk or the outside edge of the traveled way if no sidewalk is present. And this is to take into account that roads have different widths in some of the towns. So we wanted to have kind of uniform way of measuring that setback. So that's what we landed on with that. Right. See here. Section 310 is the next one I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. In that, hang on one second. So we're going to spend some time on section 310. We're going to do C3. This section was changed to require substantial improvement or substantial damage structures in the flood hazard overlay district to have the lowest floor raised to at least 2 feet above the base flood of elevation, which that's in line with sound floodplain management. Right now, you just had to bring it to the level. You typically don't want to bring it to the level. You want to bring it in excess of that. So 2 foot above the base flood elevation is pretty standard. You'll find that in most flood hazard regulations. Let's see. There was a section change made to section 310E. I gave the NFIP, the Vermont NFIP coordinator 30 days instead of 21 days to respond to the deadline to issue a permit. So basically, this puts them in line with my deadline. So I have 30 days once I deem an application complete to respond to it one way or the other once I receive it. So I'm allowing the Vermont National Flood Insurance Program the same amount of time. So it might lead to a situation where I get the approval and issue the permit the same day. I'm okay with that. Within that 30-day window, I'm okay with that. And I think it's all right to just kind of let it line up. Because otherwise it's, I want to make sure that they have the chance to, ideally, I don't want to be in a position where if they don't respond, I just issue the permit anyways. I kind of want to give them as much time as possible because typically you only have like 5 people in the state that do the whole thing. So it's oftentimes, from my experience in Richmond, it can take a while to hear back from them, just depending on what's going on. Section 320. This was also kind of in line with what we said about variances, that the DRB is not going to issue variances for projects that are in the flood hazard overlay district. And that's to just bring it in compliance with kind of NFIP best practices. You should not be waiving or issuing variances for your flood hazard regs. While you can do it, it's just not a good idea. All right. There were some changes in section 400. I'm going to draw your attention to B6. And this was just noting that first, this is dealing with permit exemptions. And this notes that kind of what you need to do to have an agricultural fence exempt from zoning. Essentially, you have to follow. So basically, it defines what counts as agriculture, and then it goes into what you need to do, and also references the definition of agricultural practices or required agricultural practices, which are now in section 900.
And forestry, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, silviculture and forestry. So those types of structures are typically exempt from the zoning bylaws. There is also one here, B7. This is a new section that was added to the bylaw. This is maintenance. So there's certain types of maintenance activity that's going to be exempt from the bylaw. We're going to go into more detail about what that is here in just a minute. Let me see here. We can skip through that. There was a minor change, but it was one that we spent quite a bit of time talking about, to section 410. And it's for 10A6. And it specifically notes that if you generally, like if you have a home business or like you have a contractor who's running a business out of their house and they're there during the day, that they don't need to get a permit for that if they're leaving off site to do work, except for the fact is if they're going to have a bunch of employees park on their site, they should have that approved by the DRB through a home business use, which is a little bit more intensive than a home occupation. Home occupation is something that occurs entirely inside of the home. So let's say you have a home office or a law practice that you run out of your house and there's very minimal traffic. That would be kind of an example of that. Home business is still allowed, but you typically there's more traffic, there's vehicles coming and going. This is to try and preserve, make sure that if this happens in a residential area, that you're not having 15 or 20 cars parked there during the day. As much as we want people to carpool, so that you can't do it, but there should be a little bit higher level of review and screening of vehicles and that sort of thing. Yeah, and that goes into saying 415 goes in the level of screening for parking for employees for home businesses and just says that we need to make sure that it's a little bit more legally binding than our existing language. One section that underwent a lot of changes was section 420. This was a mix of advice. This one had a lot of input from our town attorney on this, because how a lot of this section works is you can't just cite it as 24 VSA 4412, because there's decision points in there. There's either or. So towns have to decide what they kind of want to do. You just can't reference it. So basically what we did with this language was added to clarify that anywhere a single family unit is allowed, a 2-unit dwelling is also allowed by right. This is required of Act 47 and 181. So it's codifying that. Language is added to note that ADUs are by right use in any lot that has a single family dwelling. They're not allowed on duplexes. So you either get a duplex or a single family home in an ADU. We do have a weird quirk in our bylaws, which is, I think, a byproduct of the fact that we used to have single family only zoning, that duplexes can be 2 detached single family homes on the same lot. Just so you know that. That is somewhat unique to us. Nope. That is unique to us, but I just wanted to put that out there. So a lot of times people would take advantage of that because there's size caps on ADUs. So if you want to get around the size cap, you do it that way. It's still permitted use, but just wanted to clarify that. Let me see here. Yep. Go skip on down to 420D. The section was added to make clear that any hotels can't be penalized for renting rooms for housing assistance, and that's required by Act 47 and Act 181. Skipping on a little bit as well. Section 420H. This section was clarified to approve so basically this is clarifying the approval process for lots that do not have frontage on a private road. The requirement that DRB approval was removed, and basically it's just going to have to be built according to Article 8, which is in the town of Morristown road policy and driveway standards. So that would be essentially Jordan, you guys would be involved with that. Yep, section 421. I'm going to not read through it all, but that section was added. That is a new section. And it just clarifies the regulations around ADUs, and that comes from state statute. That's the state standard for ADUs. So we put it in there. Even though we could kind of work around it more or less with our detached duplex thing, it's still important to have that in here just in case that ever changes. Section 425B, the section was changed to note that in order for a fence to be considered a farm fence, the farm needs to follow required agricultural practices. This also allows for taller than usual privacy fences. Right now, if you want a privacy fence, you're allowed 6 feet. Fences are exempt if they're 6 feet tall on the property lines on the 2 sides and rear property. They have to be 4 feet if they're going to be on the front or less. This allows you to have up to 8 feet, provided it's set back 6 feet further from the property boundary, and it's only on the backyard, so not the front of the house. This is to allow for some taller fences, potentially maybe in our in the CB district or the downtown area, if people want to have a little bit more privacy there. Although it applies to everybody. One quick thing, moving on for section 426. This simply notes that you need to have a professional engineer is required if you have a pond that's within 1,000 feet of the town right of way. And that's essentially to make sure that the pond doesn't fail in a flood event and damage town infrastructure. And we need to have the road foreman or highway superintendent in this case sign off on that to make sure that it's not going to impact town infrastructure in the event of a failure. So this one's going to be a little bit more meaty. This is section 435. This is an entirely new section of the bylaw. And this is around governing maintenance. And basically what this notes is that routine care or upkeep of a structure, which results in the retention of the current condition and value, doesn't require a permit. So essentially is, I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit. So if your roof is so rotted, right, let's say that the only way you can repair the roof is to demolish the roof and rebuild it, that does not need a permit. Same thing with the house. If let's say you're fixing up in a pre-existing home, somebody purchases a dilapidated home and it's so far gone that the only thing that they can do is to knock it down and rebuild it. I'm going to let them do that without a permit, provided that you can document, here is what the building looked like. Here is what it's going to be built to in the exact same spot, exact same pitch. I don't care so much about the color, but same square footage, same orientation, everything. That doesn't need a permit. You make it bigger, smaller, you turn it, you move it 5 feet to the left. That's no longer, that's not maintenance. That's a new building at that point.
Changing its appearance, Tyler.
Changing the appearance to a certain extent. Like again, if you're going to paint it a different color, no. But if you're going to say, hey, there was a screened in porch on the front, I'm going to put the screened in porch on the back. That's not the same structure. That needs a new permit. So it's designed to be somewhat flexible for people who have homes that have fire damage or structures that are just so deteriorated through lack of maintenance that the only way to maintain it is to destroy it essentially and rebuild it. To you to do that, to get around the caveat, there's two safeguards in that. Is you have to be able to document what it was and that you're restoring it. So if you go ahead and start demolishing it and somebody complains to me that, hey, they didn't get a permit to do this. If I go to you and say, George, you said, oh, you're demolishing this house, you're rebuilding it. Do you have a photo or anything that shows what it looks like? You can't prove that. Then you got to pull a new permit to build it and treat it as if it was a home. And I also in C is the kind of the blanket that if I determine it's not maintenance, it's not maintenance. So that gets kind of around the whole argument of if there's any argument that comes up, the word of the zoning administrator is going to be the final word on that. So it's designed to build some flexibility in there, but also make sure we have some safeguards that people don't try and abuse that. Any questions about that so far?
No.
Okay. Section 450.A. There was a change in here that allows developers to use town-owned, basically municipal parking to fulfill parking requirements, provided that it's within 500 feet of the municipal lot. It also allows the developer to fulfill this requirement by building public parking.
I just got a question about the last one, Valerie.
Mhm.
I don't know, I really don't.
About maintenance?
Well, maintenance, but I know like we've been at the pay taxes for people when they're, that have been damaged, and I don't know if there's a way if I have a house and it burns down. And then I think we use the permit piece as a way to gauge the completion of the home back to what it was before in certain situations. So that's where I'm going.
Are you asking me or are you telling me that's something that you?
I'm just wondering because I know that we've run into situations similar to that when we're abating taxes for people. And just if a home is to the point where it's a complete disrepair and someone has to rebuild it, are they still going to pay? And maybe I'm opening a can of worms here, but are they still going to have to pay the full taxes on that parcel for the time that their home is not at the assessed value that it was at prior?
Guess it depends on how long it's not built for.
But you got a permit process in place to ensure that there was some sort of a checks and balances as to where you were when you built the home. That's just
Yeah.
one, and it probably,
Richard, I think that's a great question. I'll be honest, it's not something that I've thought too much about or have a particular position on that. I would say that Kevin, I think, has been dealing with the one that comes to mind is the one on, I think Union Street here, that one that had the larger fire there. I think Kevin has his own process and stuff for that as far as tax abatement and stuff like that. It's not something I deal with a ton in zoning.
and I don't know either, I
Yeah.
know that we've run into situations where we've abated taxes, at this point, it seems like. My house burned down today, tomorrow I'm gonna start rebuilding it. But it's not worth the same money that it was yesterday.
Mm.
So I'm gonna come to the town with VCA and say, I want a reduction rate on my taxes, and you don't have any, it's your word against, it's my word against yours. As to what the value of the home was.
Well, I think the
20th versus April 2nd.
I think the value is more or less, again, that's tied up in the lister card. So I think you could have to, again, I would refer you to Kevin and kind of the listers for that. What I'm looking at is, do you need a permit to repair your home or do you not need a permit to repair your home? And what this is saying, and it doesn't have to say this, we could change it.
I just don't know if they're typing that. It's kind of wrong, because I know that.
For what I can say to that right now is for any home that has had fire damage, I have had basically said that as long as you are repairing it to what is there, because that's essentially what I'm doing right now, even though it's not written in here anyways, that's how I typically approach this issue. If you're repairing something that is there and you're not changing it, you're not adding square footage, you're not doing anything to that, I'm going to let you do that without a permit. If you're going to make it bigger, smaller, move it, that needs a permit.
I understand.
That's got to be up to the list.
I understand that, but yeah, so that's why I said it's probably tied into something different, but I
Yeah.
know that's.
I know Kevin is pretty on it in terms of like when that fire, he was on them with tax abatement stuff, because they came to me after saying, hey, do I need a permit to demo or this? And I'm like, demolitions, we don't need permits for, you just have to make the area safe essentially. But if you want to rebuild it, back to what it was, you can do so. Yeah.
Okay, next.
All right. So that was so I noticed I was on 2045A, just talking that basically you could count municipal parking for your parking within a certain amount of feet. And you can also opt to build public parking, provided that the select board approves it and then the DRB approves it.
That's 450. right?
That is 450. Yep.
That very last sentence of 450 is a bit confusing.
Mhm.
It looks like you can fulfill parking requirements of the municipal lot in question based on peak hours of
Yes.
demand of existing uses of the lot, and peak hours of proposed.
Yes, so this is, and I do apologize, this is somewhat a jargony term. So essentially, there's a whole manual that zoning administrators and planning directors use
So that
to determine required parking based on a use. We have a whole parking table in here that says that X number for a certain use, you require X number of spaces, right? You can get around that by saying you have to have all the spaces, or you use the most intensive, or you say, hey, there's a bunch of uses, these spaces will be used 9 to 5. And there's going to be a bunch of spaces that are going to be used 6 to 7 when the 9 to 5 places are closed. Therefore, we don't need to have double the parking for both. We can use both to complement it because they're not going to be there at the same time, right? That's what that is essentially saying. So it is a little jargony, but that's very much very common that you could do that. All right, the next one I'm going to draw your attention to, we're going to skip forward a bit more into the 480s. 480B. And this notes that if we're going to do any more development down in Class 4 road, the select board is going to be required to sign off on that before a zoning permit or subdivision permit is issued. So that's basically because that is Class 4 road is town-owned property. So prior to somebody developing that further, you guys have to say that you're okay with it. Section 480G. This language was added to clarify that campers, RVs, shipping containers, and storage trailers will be required to obtain a permit if not stored in a driveway, campground, or sales lot. And they have to comply with the flood hazard overlay district regulations. And that's to prevent kind of a bunch of campers and things being just parked on lawns and other stuff like that. Now, we do have a lot of changes coming up. We're going to skip to section 510. So this is where we get into multiple principal uses on a lot, which we discussed earlier. There is, I'm going to point out a misciting there. Note section 204A. It's 204E. That's in the and B of that section. But this section, again, codifies how we're going to permit multiple principal uses on a lot and runs through that process. Basically, it notes that it's restricted to that. It notes the districts that the use is allowed in, and it also notes that basically it says that anything on the use table for that district, you're assumed by right to have that use. What we're trying in any building. What we're trying to do is to capture changes to the site plan. So if you have to add a building, if you have to change the parking, if you have to change the landscaping, if you have to change where the trash is stored, if you have to change how the traffic circulates the site, that's going to require, while the use is permitted, right? You don't have to get a permit to add the use to the building. You have to get the site plan approved by the DRB. And that's to make sure there's adequate screening, lighting, the traffic circulation is mitigated, the landscaping is adequate. It's a public hearing process, so members of the public, if they have concerns about it, can come in and have that. Otherwise, it'd be just dealing with the zoning permit. Now, if you come to me and you want to add a use to a building, but you don't have to change any of those things, then I can just add it to the building with a simple zoning permit. You don't have to get that approved by the DRB. Conversely, if you add a conditional use to that building, the board has to approve both the use and the site plan if you're going to add it. You can add as many uses to the building or property as you want, but if you add one that is a conditional use, that is going to require conditional use approval. Let me see here. So that's what that section does. That is a brand new section.
So 510, that first sentence in A, it does include MOR. I think that's a typo, correct? Because MOR, mixed office 10,
Hang on one second here.
510.
Yeah, it might be.
I think it's just a typo.
No, because it is a use. Yes, it is, because it's not a typo, because it is a use in the 2045A. It's not going to be in the new one, so I will cut that out. All right. So that's done there. And I do need to make that change there to 2045E. So any questions about 510? No. Section 511, this is another new section. This is that short-term rental regulation. So the reason why I did this is technically you could read, and I had developers inquiring about this, which is what kind of keyed me into it, is that right now, if you read our zoning bylaws, you could interpret them in such a way as to say that if you are building a short-term rental that is 4 or fewer bedrooms, if you read the language, it says it's exempt from the above local permitting requirements. So you could read that in such a way as to say, like, well, I don't need a permit for this at all. It's a short-term rental because it says it's exempt from the above local permitting requirements. Therefore, the above is the entire zoning bylaw because the definition is in the back. And it's important to remember, I have to interpret these literally, regardless of whether or not they make sense. So what I tried to do was to capture, which I think the intent was, but to codify this to basically say that no, the use of a short-term rental 4 or fewer bedrooms does not require a permit, or it's a by right use. But the building that the use is occurring in does need a permit. You need to get a wastewater permit. You need to get the permit for the actual building. So that's what this section kind of does and teases out. It does also note that second here, that you need to get, applicable wastewater permits. They have to get approved by the Division of Fire Safety. That's a state law. That's on page, same section. It would be on your packet here. Bear with me.
52.
What's the number?
I think it's 52.
Page 77 and 78. It carries over to 79, it carries over to page 81. You
Yeah.
kind of go from page
I'm just
77.
wondering where it
Yep.
is in the section, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's further on in there. And then it notes the 5 bedrooms or fewer short-term rentals. And again, it just codifies what you have to do with those. That does require conditional use approval if it's 5 to 8. Again,
Where are you still, Tyler? I'd like to see what you agree.
that language, hang on a minute,
We're in 511.
because I printed my own.
Page 81, page 81.
Yep.
It just, there's a lot of deleted text in between the two.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. So any questions about that? So again, the content, for those of you who haven't changed it, has not changed, other than I've just taken what I thought was the spirit and stripped it out and just kind of beefed it up. I haven't changed anything about owner occupancy, all that. It's still the same. It's just basically just codified in here a little bit clearer to make sure that we can permit the buildings that the use is occurring in. All right. So that's that. I'm going to skip to section 660 now. This is a big change in that it was removed. So this whole section was removed, and basically this was the local Act 250 review of municipal impacts. That section is struck from the bylaw. I'm not sure if it's showing up on this for some reason, but that has been cut out.
It's completely cut.
That's completely cut out. The reason why it was cut out is that if you are going to review Act 250, there's certain criteria. There's 3, and I don't know them right off the top of my head, but there's 3. If you want to review those locally, you're required to follow something called MAP of them, which is the municipal accepted municipal practices. I forget the exact acronym, but essentially what it is, it's you run the DRB hearing as a civil proceeding. There's civil rules of evidence. It's very onerous to do. And quite frankly, while it's been on the books, we have not followed it, to my understanding, from the cases that I've looked at it. That doesn't mean we have never done it. Again, we have a lot of permits back there. From what I have been able to tell, that has not happened. And it's not something, quite frankly, I have the resources to do on my own. And the DRB does not feel that something that they are interested in. So that's why we opted to axe that out. It doesn't impact our ability to get tier 1B. It doesn't impact our downtown designation, anything like that. That was all run by the town attorneys. So there's no risk at all to that by removing it. Let me see here. So we're going to skip into now section 720. Actually, no, we're going to back up. We're going to be section 710 first. My apologies. So this section went over some fairly serious revisions, particularly C. And this goes over the definition of major and minor subdivisions. So a major subdivision, for the purposes, I'm going to just read this verbatim because I think it's important. Major subdivisions, for the purposes of these regulations, major subdivisions shall be defined as any proposed subdivision resulting in 3 or more new parcels and 1 parent parcel. So 4 total. All major subdivisions must go through section 740 plan unit development, conservation subdivision process and be approved by the DRB. If the applicant is proposing multiple principal uses on the lot, the project will also be subject to section 510, which is the new multiple principal uses on a lot definition. So a thing to remember, a minor was also changed to be 3. So if it's 3, it's me. If it's 4 or more, it goes to the DRB. Section 720 also underwent some significant changes. So you'll see it's a mix of, basically I took our old section 510, which was our conservation subdivision language, and broke that up and split it into different sections. So it still exists more or less. It's just in a different place than where it used to be. The subdivision process has been changed back to a more traditional process. Right now, our process kind of it's a one-step process, but you have a sketch plan review process, which it really isn't sketch plan review. It's really sketch plan and preliminary bolted together, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And from conversations with our town attorney, it's highly unusual. So what we did was split it back out into kind of a traditional process. So you have an optional sketch plan process. That's not mandatory. And then you have a preliminary and final review for majors. So that's what essentially C and D explain that in that section as to what's preliminary, what's final. And we go into E because any major subdivision we have is automatically a conservation subdivision. This is where you start to see that language for the open space requirements, right? Right now, our bylaws require you to conserve 50% of any major subdivision of the land associated with major subdivision has to be conserved, and that conserved land has to be on its own parcel. So that language hasn't disappeared. It's just been added into this section. So that's in section, 720E. It's the same requirement that we already have. Section 740 is, again, a lot of that old conservation subdivision language has been put in here, essentially. It goes over the purchases. If you were to compare this to our existing 510, it would be not quite verbatim, but very, very close to that. And it just also notes that pre-submission meetings are in there. Sketch plan review, preliminary subdivision, those are all things that are going to have to happen now. Or not the sketch plan part, but the preliminary. So that whole section is not old, but is not new, but it's in a different spot. And that really runs me through a lot of the more major changes. There were definitions that were added to the section 900. There's a definition of served by municipal water and sewer. There's a definition of a shelter, short-term rentals. You'll notice that definition has been cut down significantly because we have a section that explains what that is now. And I know I've thrown a lot at you guys. I could obviously go on more, but that I think hits all the really big changes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. I know Josh is online. Josh, I'm just going to give the board a chance to ask any questions if they have them, and then I'll give you a chance to speak as well. But does the board have any comments?
Sure. I don't have a question. I just want to say this is an amazing what was done by a large number of people. And it is for someone who is not, this is not my forte to say the least. It's as clear as it can be made, and it seems to have been very thoughtfully done. And I appreciate all the work of the Planning Commission and you, Tyler, and anybody else that had anything to do with it, because it's to me remarkably well done. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I had one question. I noticed in section 310, the special flood hazard areas, it indicated the flood insurance rate maps dated July 2nd, 87.
Yes.
Have they not been updated?
That is correct. Our official firm maps are on paper and they're in my office, and that is what we use to do NFIP flood insurance stuff. So this is a big change for me. From Richmond, we had updated firm maps. It was on FEMA's website. Ours, if you search it right now on FEMA's, it comes up as a bunch of green dots. So if anybody wants to know if their home is in the flood hazard overlay district, they come in here. I literally have to pull up maps. I have a table back there. They go section by section to find this. This came up when Morrisville Water and Light was pursuing a project to protect some of their infrastructure here on 15A. As you head out of town, they have the two wild aquifers there. They engaged in a project last year to do some flood mitigation, riprap, other things to try and prevent further compromising of that area. And yeah, I had to use the 1987 flood map for it. We are in the process of getting new ones, I'm happy to say, but that's a whole process in and of itself. You guys have to ratify them. There's an appeal period. there's a whole thing with it. It is coming, I will say. But it is, right now, we got the maps from 87 and very clearly those are not up to date. So there's a good
Amazing.
chance that
Amazing.
a lot of stuff that's not mapped as a floodplain now is probably a floodplain.
Josh, is there anything you want to add to this conversation?
No, nothing at all. I'm really here in support of Tyler. A lot of these proposed changes were made before his time. He presented this to the trustees the same, and I just wanted to be here to answer any questions that he didn't have context on, but it seems it's well presented, well received. You've all heard my opinion before. I mean, these are 2 years anyway in the making, and I'm just trying to push them through so that we can get to our public hearings and you can get to yours and the trustees can get to theirs so that we can codify and make these things real. We have other work to do and we know it, but I think these changes are long overdue, and I hope they're well received and just ready to move forward. But explaining them,
Josh.
so yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, for what it's worth, I think they're very well received by the board. So I think we're all very happy. I know there might be a couple of comments about what might be coming next, but these seem to be very good.
Great.
Leah, I know you have.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions, and I do also want to reiterate what's been said before. Clearly, a ton of work have gone into this and very detailed work, and thank you very much. It's been a big labor and it's come a long, long way, and thank you for that. And I do think it's something that we should move forward so that you can keep to your timeline. Just a couple of questions, some for clarification, some for, okay, let's get these passed, but let's think about this for maybe the next reiteration. Under section 330, which has to do about environmental concerns, perhaps consider noise pollution and light pollution. Perhaps.
You said 330?
330, yes.
Yeah, so this is environmental source protection areas. So these are like a specific thing in state statute. So these are like, your rare vernal pools, rare threatened and endangered species, deer wintering areas. Like these are actual things. Now, I will say there are a lot of towns that will have some performance standards, right? Like lighting standards. There is something that was in here.
Number of lighting standards.
Yeah, I did note in here too that there is a standard which we currently don't have, where I said you're allowed to have like 1 to 3 foot candles escape the property. Because right now, the issue that I have with them as written are 2023 ones, not the 2026, is that it just says light can't escape the property, but I have no way of measuring that, quantifying it. That's the other issue with noise, right? I have to have a certain standard I'm hiding to. It can't be just, I think it's loud, right? It has to be, okay, you're allowed X number of decibels per hour, because if I'm going to determine if somebody is or isn't in violation of something, I have to have some way to quantify that. So where this has come up, and I'm not, to be fair, I'm not a huge, I struggle with it, and I struggle with some of these other ones, which are a little more difficult to measure, because technically, and I handle this issue all the time in Richmond, particularly around leaf blowers. As we get into spring, one day I had 8 noise complaints about leaf blowers. And essentially what it is like once the noise stops, the violation stops. And once it starts again, that's a new violation. So it can't be just, oh, it's really loud one time, I don't catch it, and I go out there again, you keep doing it. The violation only exists if it's constant.
Right.
So there are things we could look at, like certain allowed decibel levels for like a commercial practice. I really would be hesitant to get into it on a residential level outside of like that being somebody running a home occupation, which that should be quantified, because it just gets messy because people don't like leaf blowers for whatever reason. Other people have different standards of lawn care that they like to subscribe to, right? Some more vigorous than others.
So Leah, you've got some others.
But that's the point. It's more of like a business use long-term. type-
We could do that. We could do something
Yeah.
like that in the future.
you've answered a lot of my questions already, so that's part of the problem. I'm having to go through my notes. Under section 640, when the zoning director grants a permit, how do, and this is because it's not conditional. So this means you've granted a permit and butters and interested parties, how do they know that that permit has been approved?
So,
Granted.
yep. And that's in state statute. So if you apply a zoning permit, the only notice that a developer is required to give is the permit notice approval poster. I could get you a copy of one. I have one in my office. You might see them. They're those P posters. They're required to post that by the town, visible from the public right of way. I have something baked into my approval letters. It's not in the zoning bylaw. It's just a condition I put on everything that says you have to send me a photo of it or let me know that it's been posted and I'll come verify that it's been posted. If you can't do that, then it either potentially not invalidates your permit, but you have to start the appeal process over, essentially. But that is the only legal requirement of notice that somebody's required to give for a zoning permit is the permit poster.
Permit itself.
Yep.
Section 760A. Is there a time limit on how long the zoning administrator can extend the filing deadline?
There is something in state statute that we have to hear or have a public hearing. I think it's within it's either 120 or 160 days. I forget exactly which. So we can't just keep pushing it off indefinitely. But I have 30 days to review a permit and determine whether or not it's complete or issue a decision. If I don't do it, technically it's considered deemed complete, essentially. What I typically would do in that case, like if I've had one where I've come close to it before, I usually try and issue it that day. I try and stay ahead of them. I have issued permits right on the 30th day before just because of workflow. But I have to respond to you in some way. And that could be, yep, you got your permit, or Leo, you're missing X, Y, or Z. You need to give me X, Y, or Z. And that kind of resets the 30 days. Yeah. But I can't also, if you feel like I'm just dragging it out on purpose, you can appeal my determination in the DRB to say like a zoning administrator has failed to release this. I feel it's frivolously. Somebody can take me to the DRB to try and compel me to issue a permit.
I mean, the only reason I asked is because a sentence said may extend the filing. And then it just dropped off.
Which one was it?
760A. And at one point it did list a time.
Yeah, that's 180 days.
This one said 90 days, actually, 90 additional days. So I think that's why I asked the question. It said you can extend the deadline, but what was crossed off was the amount of time.
Yep.
And I'm reading these for.
Yeah, well, I think the issue, what I would probably do in this case then is I would probably just strike. I think that probably what it was. Is that the zoning administrator may extend because I can't extend. So I think that was struck out, and then the red was there and it was supposed to end on the red.
And then in that same section under B, again, the last sentence, it has to do with the acceptance of acceptance by formal act of the select board or the village trustees, as the case may be. And so is it clear what the select board signs off on and what the trustees sign off on in the zoning bylaws?
It would reference the road. So what I typically do is reference our road standard. That is a good catch. And what we could probably look at is cleaning that up to just maybe reference. It might be simpler just to reference our road policy.
Because it's more than just streets, though, but includes other things as well. So that's why I asked about that.
Okay, so 760 road policy. Instead of SB and trustees.
And like I said, I think this has been just a tremendous amount of work, and I do think that these should move forward so that we can kind of put these to bed as need be. But I would like to reiterate a conversation that the select board had earlier, in that we continue to work on the next iteration to include a definition for incidental to construction and give parameters to what that means. I also have had folks asking questions about other types of business services or facilities. AI data centers has come up a lot, and AI data centers with the concern regarding the impact on the environment, specifically to the water usage and also the grid, the electric usage, and also noise with those. And how would those be considered in our bylaws? And a definition for a community facility as well. Would it be a business service? Would it be a community facility? And if there's any kind of, for lack of a better term, human warehousing beyond a shelter, beyond a group home. Not saying one way or the other, but I just want to make sure something like that would come before a conditional use, the DRB, so that there'd be public input.
And I believe, let me see here, community facility. Currently, yeah, depending on the district, the only district that community facility currently doesn't require conditional use is the CB district. Everything else requires it to be conditional use right now. And a community facility, for those following along at home, is kind of a catch-all for government institute. It's a very, very broad definition. It encompasses everything from libraries, the building we're in here, the PD, the fire department, things like that. So it's a very, very broad definition, which I am not the world's biggest fan of, again, because I have to interpret this literally. So while I don't want the bylaw to necessarily have to be 500 pages long, if there isn't a definition in there, I'm then kind of left to do the Merriam-Webster thing, which is where we lead in that thought experiment of what is incidental to construction.
In reading through this, I believe one of the community facilities is either state owned or state licensed or nonprofit.
Yeah.
So my question for that as well about the situation where it could be perhaps state owned, but then it's then licensed to a third party, which is a for-profit third party.
Yeah, it's a little messy it is messy to be fair.
But those are the kind of things, some kind of definition regarding business services, community facility, and then that ever popular incidental to construction.
So if I'm hearing you there, you would like the business service use to be broken out more, because we do have a definition for business service.
I just want to see that, make sure that it's you can't make sure of anything in this world today, but things like AI data centers, that at least it would come through conditional so that there could be a robust discussion and allow folks to weigh in on that. Ditto with any kind of human warehousing function.
Anything else from the board? Yeah, I see Josh's hand. By the way, Josh, just one sec. We're not looking to take action tonight. We're just looking to allow.
No, this is not a public hearing. We haven't had our public hearing yet.
Yeah.
But just based on guidance I got from Brent, that I had already done this walkthrough with the trustees. So we wanted to make sure that you guys had the opportunity to do that as well before we have our public hearing.
Josh.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of just nailed it. I just, Leah, we're open to all direction, comments, etc. on future changes. The topic at hand are these changes, just so we can get to our public hearing.
Yes,
And-
absolutely. And I support that. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I mean that. Thank you. Just in the interest of time and focus and concentration, we're just trying to get this moved on, and the focus of this meeting was to explain all of these changes, and I'm glad to hear they're well received so that we can get to a hearing, and we may hear from members of the public the very same thing. When we do, if we make substantive changes, it backs up the timeline quite a bit when it comes to public warnings, our hearing process, then getting passed along to you, then finding cooperation between select board and trustees and trying to get them all passed. So I implore to you, we are open to all future considerations, but I'm also asking that we stick to what's in these changes and get your feedback on if we need direction to change them, okay, it's going to slow down that process. If we don't need them now, let's move along.
Yeah, Josh, and I think that's where the board is at. The board does want these to move along as well. I think I don't need to restate it, but yeah, just some comments about what might be coming in the future, but not these bylaws, not these proposals. Any other comments regarding these proposed bylaws? Yeah, come on up, introduce yourself and.
Crystal Blank, Morristown resident. I'll echo what everybody else said. Excellent job on this. It's a heavy weight of work for sure, and picking up where someone else left off is always difficult. The one thing I just wanted to comment on, there are also significant changes to the borders of the zones on the zoning map, and those weren't in the summary of the work. And there's no map provided, and I was just curious, or I would just like to see that at some point, I think, to visualize where those changes are. I've read the borders as especially the borders, but to see it on a map would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be really nice to have at the public hearing. Is that the plan?
Short answer is, I have not gotten that far yet, because I think putting those maps together, I think there's a little bit more of a process than what we might think. It is on my to-do list. It's something I actually want to ask, get some help from LCPC on that to get these mapped out. What I can say is that most of the zoning district changes, those do predate me. So I can't articulate exactly what. The one change that is in here that I made, which was a resident essentially was told that the district boundary was being changed. We had some documentation on the town that the town understood it to have been changed, but when I went and looked at it, it hadn't actually been changed. So I changed that boundary. And I think the rest of the changes were, there was one district that was removed, which was in this case, which was the MOR district. So all those changes were meant to try and bring those pieces into bring them into their various respective pieces. But if you had a specific concern about how something was mapped, let's say in your district, if you could try and bring that to me, I'm happy to set up a time to look at it real quick. I do have to be careful of doing something called spot zoning, right? Where I can't just change a parcel that's in the middle from one district to another. If it's on the border, that's a little bit different, different kettle of fish, but no, your concerns are well noted, and it's something I would like as well, some mapping.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll comment quickly if I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
We've number one, the zoning map changes and boundaries mostly followed the existing zoning map changes. They were changed because of Act 47. So to Tyler's reference, we did away with MOR. I can't remember if MDR was completely removed, but we stayed within all of the existing maps that we have. We've had trouble as the planning commission getting maps made for our zoning. And I don't know if that's budget and or availability of vendors that can actually accomplish that for us. So Chris, I empathize with you, and we all want that. All I can give you casually is we didn't drastically change any boundary of any zoning. Most of them all stayed the same, and they changed per Act 47 and the statutes that we had to follow. But the lines are where they were when they were. To Tyler's one reference in a small industrial district by Katie's Falls Road, but they all stayed basically where they are.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
And what I will do is I will look into whether or not I can get the maps added, and whether it's something that we have to approve via a public hearing, if we want to include them, or if we can just say, hey, we're taking just what's in here and codifying it, or putting it on a map and then adding it to it after the fact. I can look into that and see whether or not what we need to do with that. I think we do. I can work it into the bylaw.
Yeah, if there's some way of getting something together for the hearings.
If not
I think
this
that would be
one,
very,
for
very
the-
helpful.
For something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
I agree, based on experience. Sorry, just last comment. To my knowledge, only the written language in the bylaws is required. A map is not actually required. And we've come up in my tenure of 8 years or whatever it's been, to get a map made is the most difficult part. And we have not been able to provide that. So what I know is required is the language in the bylaws, which references, longitude, latitude, property boundaries, natural boundaries, etc. So I would love a map too, but I don't know that that's going to happen for a zoning bylaw change.
You can dig
Okay,
it.
thank you, Josh. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so specifically, LDR one has a lot of verbiage changes as to the, westerly following this river, easterly this border. And I have trouble visualizing, okay, if that is shifting, what zone is moving into its place? And that's where the maps would be helpful. So LDR one seems to be getting a decent amount of change. And I don't know if it's the hospital zone moving down to that or RRA moving into that. That's where my questions lie, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that's been duly noted. Great. Any other comments? Okay, I am going to move on. Thank you very much, Tyler, and thank you, Josh, and extend our appreciation to the rest of the commission. I think you've heard multiple times tonight how much we appreciate all the work that you've done. Okay, moving on. Old business. Do we have any old business? Approve the warrants. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the warrants.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Richard, second by George to approve the warrants. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the warrants, please say aye.
Aye.
Be unanimous. Upcoming schedule, we have on April 27th, a continuation of our discussion of discontinuances. And on April 27th, we're going to do a site visit to Lamfair Road at 4 o'clock. We're going to do a site visit to Lazy Lane at 4:30. And those are going to be followed up by a public hearing for Lamfair Road and Lazy Lane, all on the same day. That's April 27th. Then on May 4th, we're going to continue. We'll do a site visit to Stubbtown Road at 4:30. And we'll have a public hearing in this room same day at 5:30 regarding Stubbtown. And that's going to be followed by a regular select board meeting at, when that public hearing is over. So it'll be after 5:30. And then Thursday, May 7th, we'll have a site visit to Muddy Moose at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we've had a lot of discussion about Muddy Moose and the trails out there. So some of us will be able to attend that. May 18th would be our next regular select board meeting after that at 5:30. Come on up.
I'll be brief. I have a play.
You just introduce yourself as well.
Kelly, still land trust, current owners of Muddy Moose. I just wanted to avail myself for questions. I know we're still in this process. We've met with Brent a few times. I think he's keeping you all informed. So my purpose in being here is just to say we're still working on everything. We have additional grant money, which is only good news that we're working on securing through the Lake Champlain Basin Program, which is federal money. So it's work to get at it, but we're working hard at that. Yeah, and I really look forward to seeing everyone on May 7th.
So tonight the board has little to say on this because the only thing we've warned is just the visits.
You have a lot going.
But we'll certainly have more conversation about that another time.
Great.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
I cannot be there on the 7th. I'm planning my own.
50-50 at this point.
Okay, I just need to know whether I can want it.
Okay.
So let me know.
One more little piece just for the people in this room. We're starting to find that people are excited to go into the property, but we don't have a parking area right now.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky situation. We can't enforce no parking. We put up signs that say, please respect our neighbors, and there's not a parking area at this moment.
I've been talking to Chuck and that's how
Okay.
I've been doing it.
It's
So
delicate.
So where should we be parking if we're going?
There really is.
You come down Cody Hill and you come to the kind of where there's 2-3 roads going. Muddy Moose is off to the right, correct?
There is no, so the down street, the cabins, that is now their private property, and they are in the process of selling those cabins. That
Okay,
is not our parking area.
so where should the car be left? at the bottom of Cody Hill, not at the bottom of Cody Hill.
That's a question for what's the closest municipal parking, I would think, or available parking.
Or the side of the
I don't
road.
know.
Side of-
Or the side of the
Okay.
road.
Side of Cody Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Within,
George.
within the right of way is, I guess, my best.
Okay,
Right.
Okay.
Okay, other business, I take it we have none? I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Richard, a second.
second.
Motion by Richard, second by George. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
I.
It's unanimous. It's 8 o'clock exactly. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.